So thank you for the very entertaining presentation you made this morning. And it certainly covered a lot of ground. But during this interview, I'd like to find out about how consumer trends and what people are buying now and perhaps in the future, and how it affects packaged paper products. And so I'd like to find out, what are people buying off the shelves today? Is it in big packages, small packages, big retailers, small retailers?
Well, it's a combination of all those mixes. And I think there's one common theme that consumers are focused on, and that's value. So people get value by buying in bulk, people get value by buying on promotion, or shopping at different retailers that offer lower prices. So those are some of the big trends we're seeing, and those are also influencing paper products. So if we look at where the big macro trends of where consumers are shopping, they're looking at those discounts, they're going to the warehouse clubs such as Costco, they're willing to buy in bulk, and when we look at paper products, those trends are coming to life as well. So people are trying to get a better cost per use, and that's why if you can buy those larger sizes, you're going to eventually use it anyways, and some of the paper products you don't want to be left without, so it's also good to have inventory in your home that you're naturally going to burn through. So larger size are a good fit to meet that need.
And with inflation these days, especially with fresh produce coming in from points south, are people changing their buying patterns from fresh products to frozen products? And that may have an impact on paper packaging, because a lot of those frozen products will be packaged in plastic with a paper container to show off the product.
Absolutely, we do see that trend. So even though we look at the data, we see that consumers are spending more to eat healthy. So thinking about the fresh side of the store, we are spending more, but we're not actually consuming more. So consumers are actually contracting. If you think about meat, for example, and beef, they're actually buying lower cuts of beef. And now some consumers aren't buying beef as much as they were historically, and we're now shifting our purchase, whether it's to frozen, as you'd mentioned, on fruits and vegetables, which has a better value proposition, or they're actually getting their protein from other sources. So if you looked at something like canned tuna, or even all the beans as well, they're doing incredibly well. So you're going to start to see, products around the store where packaging is going to be a key driver of those trends, whether it's in the frozen aisle or in the center of stores, people move away from the perimeter because it's just so cost prohibitive.
Now, have you done any research about package design and how that influences consumer preferences?
Well, we have, and that's one thing with Nielsen. We have a couple areas of focus. So we have an area called Bases, and we do a lot of new product concept testing. So we have 30,000 households, and we send them products in advance of them being going into manufacturing, where manufacturers can then gauge consumers' perception of it and whether they're willing to buy it, and then they can forecast production, which obviously is a good part. The other thing we do too is product packaging concept testing. So you think about, there's many things that goes into a packaging. It's the type of packaging, it's the coloring, it's the messaging on the packaging. So that's where we can actually look to see what resonates really, really well. And one thing that we find that's interesting is you got to bring the whole mix together. So you may look at a packaging and look at the color. You may test the color and one color may score high. You may look at a messaging and this messaging scores high, but when you put the two together, they don't work. So think about putting a suit together. You want the tie and the shoes to match, and that's what you got to do with packaging. You got to look at everything together and test the full concept as opposed to individual concepts, because you find that just because it scores high individually, it doesn't necessarily work when it goes with the full packaging.
Do you find that package designers are becoming more innovative these days than they were several years ago?
I think so, and I think there's a couple challenges that are probably consumer-driven, and that's where the whole need for sustainability. So we do surveys and ask consumers about packaging, and a lot of consumers are concerned about package waste, right? So when you buy, like, say, razor blades, for an example, I feel like I got to be a scientist to figure out how to get into this stuff. Where now retailers and manufacturers, sometimes those products have to be merchandised that way to make it easier to ship or to put them on the shelf. But then also some of them are figuring, how do I get rid of some of that packaging and make the product more shelf-ready, and so it can be displayed on the shelf without a big box or something that consumers are concerned about.
So eco-friendliness does have an impact, does it?
Definitely. And the millennials, the younger generation we talked about in the presentation, they're even more concerned about it. So they're about sustainability, they're about free trade, they're about all these buzzwords we talk about that make a product sustainable. That is a huge driver of choice for a lot of younger consumers.
Now tell me about e-commerce and how that is impacting the use of packaging.
Oh, I don't know about the use of, well, I mean, I think with e-commerce, with the use of package, you got to think about how is something going to be easily shipped. And that's why you see things like, say, cases of water, right? They're very heavy. So, and they're not that expensive. So for someone to ship a case of water, doesn't make sense to do that through e-commerce because you can only charge so much for water and the packaging is very heavy. And same thing with other things like with whether it's milk or beverages or frozen products, there's a concern around how do you maintain that quality of the product that is in a store when it arrives on the doorstep of a consumer, that it's going to still be frozen, still fresh from that perspective. So I think packaging comes into play a lot, and just kind of getting the weight out of it, because the weight is one of the big cost drivers of e-commerce as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for an excellent presentation this morning.
Thank you.